Hello everyone, I am Beverly Joy and Ballesta and I assigned to report the topic of Republic Act number 7836. In Republic Act number 7836 Section 1, the short title, this act shall be known as the Philippine Teachers Professionalization Act of 1994. In Section 2, Statement of Policy, the state recognizes the vital role of teachers in nation building and development through a responsible and literate citizenry. Toward this end, the state shall ensure and promote quality education by proper supervision and regulation of the licensure, examination, and professionalization of the practice of the teaching profession. In Section 3, the objectives. This act has the herein objectives: A. The promotion and development and professionalization of teachers and the teaching professions. And B. The supervision and regulation of the licensure examination. In Section 4, definition of terms. For purposes of this act, the following terms shall mean: A. Teaching refers to the profession concerned primarily with classroom instruction at the elementary and secondary levels in accordance with the curriculum prescribed by the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports, whether on part-time or full-time basis in the private or public schools. Letter B. Teachers refer to all persons engaged in teaching at the elementary and secondary levels, whether on full-time or part-time basis, including industrial arts or vocational teachers and all other persons performing supervisory and or administrative function in all school in aforesaid levels and qualified to practice teaching under this act. And letter C, board, refers to the board of professional teachers duly established and constituted under this act. And letter D, commission, refers to the Professional Regulation Commission. In Article 2, Board for Professional Teachers. Section 5, creation and composition of the board. There is hereby created under this act a board for professional teachers, hereinafter called the board, a collegial body under the general supervision and administrative control of Professional Regulation Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, composed of 5 members who shall be appointed by the President of the Philippines from among the recommendees chosen by the Commission. The recommendees shall be chosen from the list of nominees selected by the Accredited Association of Teachers, who duly possess all the qualifications prescribed in Section 8 of this Act. The chairman and the vice chairman of the board shall be appointed from these 5 members by the President, provided that the members of the first board appointed under this act shall be automatically registered as professional teacher and issued with the certificate of registration and professional license upon payment of the fees for examination, registration, and other fees prescribed by the Commission. In Section 6, duties and function of the board. The board shall have the following duties and function: A. Promulgate, administer, and enforce rules and regulations necessary for carrying out the provision of this Act in accordance with the Charter of the Professional Regulation Commission. Letter B. Determine and fix the frequency, dates, and places of examination. Appoint supervisor, proctor, and other personnel as needed who shall be entitled to a daily allowance to be fixed by the board for every examination day actually attended, and use buildings and facilities of public or private schools for examination purposes. And letter C, issue, suspend, or revoke the certificate of registration for the practice of the teaching profession. Letter D, prescribe and collect examination and other fees as it may deem proper. And letter E, prescribe and or adopt a code of ethical and professional standard for the practice of the teaching profession. Such ethical standards, rules, and regulation to take effect 60 days after its publication in the official Gazette or in any newspaper of general circulation. And letter F, administer oaths in connection with the administration of this act. Letter G, supervise and regulate the registration, licensure, and practice of professional teachers in the Philippines. Letter H, adopt an official seal of the board. And letter I, look into the condition affecting the practice of the teaching profession and whenever necessary, adopt such measures as may be deemed proper for the enhancement and maintenance of high professional and ethical standards of the professions. Letter J, ensure that all educational institutions offering elementary and secondary education comply with the essential requirement for curricula, faculty, and facilities for the elementary and secondary levels. And letter K, investigate such violation of this act, the rules and the code of ethical and professional standards for professional teacher as it may come to the knowledge of the board. And for this purpose, to issue subpoena and subpoena juices tecum to secure the appearance of witnesses and the production of documents in connection therewith. And letter L, discharge such other powers, duties, and functions as the board may deem necessary for the practice of the teaching profession and the upgrading, enhancement, development, and growth of education in the Philippines. In Section 7, the term of offices. The member of the board shall hold office for a term of 3 years from the date they assume office, provided that the first appointees to the board under this act shall hold office according to the following terms. 1 member shall serve for 1 year, and 1 member for 2 years. The chairman, vice chairman, and 1 member for 3 years. Vacancy shall be served for the unexpired term only. No person who has served for 2 consecutive terms shall be eligible for reappointment. Appointment to fill an expired term shall be considered an appointment to a complete term. In Section 8, qualification of board members. Each board member must at the time of his appointment A. Be a citizen and resident of Philippines. B. Be at least 35 years of age, of proven integrity, and possess a high moral values in his personal as well as professional conduct and has not been convicted of any offense involving moral turpitude. Letter C. Be a holder of degree of Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science in Education, and preferably a holder of a master's or doctorate degree in education, or their equivalents, from a university, school, college, and academy or institute duly constituted, recognized, and or accredited by the Philippine government. In letter D, be a professional teacher with a valid certificate of registration and a valid professional license, save those members who shall compose the first Board for Professional Teachers. Letter E, has been a professional teacher in active practice of teaching professional for at least 10 years in elementary and secondary level. And letter F, not be an official or member of the faculty or nor have pecuniary interest in any university, college, school, or institution conferring a bachelor's degree in education or its equivalent for at least 3 years prior to his appointment, and neither connected with a review center or with any group or association where review classes or lectures in preparation for the licensure examination are offered or conducted. Provided, however, that the membership to the board shall be evenly distributed to cover all levels of education, including equitable representation of the different fields of specialization. In Section 9, compensation of the board, the chairman, vice chairman, and the members of the board shall receive compensation comparably to the compensation received by existing regulatory boards under the Professional Regulation Commission, computed on the basis of the number of examinees and or candidates. In Section 10, supervision of the board and the custodian of its records. The board shall be under the supervision and control of the commission. All records, including application for examination, examination papers and results, minutes of deliberation, administrative cases and investigative cases, and investigation involving professional teachers shall be kept by the Commission. In Section 11, Secretariat and Support Service. The Professional Regulation Commission, through its chairman, shall provide the Secretariat and other support services to implement effectively the provision of this Act. In Section 12, removal of a board member. The chairman of any member of the board may be removed by the President of the Philippines upon recommendation of the Commission for neglect of duty, incompetence, unprofessional, unethical, immoral, or dishonorable conduct, commission or toleration of irregularities in the examination. After having given the opportunity to defend himself in a proper administrative investigation. In the course of investigation, the President may preventively suspend the respondent. In Article 3, we have the examination and registration. Section 13, examination, registration, and license required. Except as otherwise specifically allowed under the provisions of this Act, all applicants for registration as professional teachers shall be required to undergo a written examination which shall be given at least once a year in such places and dates as the board may determine upon approval by the Commission. A valid certificate of registration and a valid professional license from the Commission are required before any person is allowed to practice as a professional teacher in the Philippines, except as otherwise allowed under this Act. In Section 14, scope of examination. The examination for the elementary and secondary school teachers shall be separate. The examination for teachers in the elementary shall consist of two parts, namely the professional education and the general education. And the examination for teachers in the secondary level shall consist of three parts, namely professional education, general education, and field of specialization. In Section 5, qualification requirements of applicants. No applicant shall be admitted to take the examination unless on the date of filing of the application he shall have complied with the following requirements. First, letter A, a citizen of the Philippines or an alien whose country has reciprocity with the Philippines in the practice of the teaching profession. Letter B, at least 18 years of age. Letter C, in good health and good reputation with high moral values. And letter D, has not been convicted by final judgment by a court for an offense involving moral turpitude. And letter E, a graduate of a school, college, or university recognized by the government and possesses the minimum educational qualification as follows. First, for teachers in preschool, a bachelor's degree in early childhood education or BESED or its equivalent. Number 2, for teacher in elementary grades, a bachelor degree in elementary education or its equivalent. Number 3, for teacher in secondary grades, a bachelor's degree in education or its equivalent with a major and minor, or a bachelor's degree in arts and sciences with at least 10 units in professional education. And 4, for teacher of vocational and 2-year technical courses, a bachelor degree in the field of specialization or its equivalent, with at least 18 units in professional education. In Section 16, report of the result of examination. The board shall, within 120 days after the examination, report the ratings obtained by each candidate to professional regulation for approval and appropriate action. In Section 17, issuance of certificate of registration and professional license. The registration of a professional teacher commences from the date his name is enrolled in the roster of professional teachers. Every registrant who has satisfactorily met all the requirements specified in this act shall, upon payment of registration fee, be issued a certificate of registration as a professional teacher bearing the full name of the registrant with serial number and date of issuance signed by the chairman of the commission, vice chairman, and members of the board, stamped with the official seal as evidence that the person named therein is entitled to practice the profession with all the rights and privileges appurtenant thereto. The certificate shall remain in full force and effect until withdrawn, suspended, and or revoked in accordance with law. A professional license signed by the chairman of the commission and bearing the registration number and date of issuance thereof and the month of expiry or renewability shall likewise be issued to every registrant who has paid the annual registration fees for 3 consecutive years. This license shall serve as evidence that the licensee can lawfully practice his profession until the expiration of its validity. In Section 18, Oath before practice. Every registrant shall be required to take his professional oath before practicing as a professional teacher. In Section 19, Periodic Merit Examination of Teachers. To encourage continuing professional growth and development and to provide additional basis for merit promotion, in addition to their performance rating, teacher may take an oral and written examination at least once in 5 years as basis for merit promotion. In taking this examination, no fee shall be required. In Section 20, failure to pass the merit examination. If a teacher fails to pass the merit examination, he or she shall be allowed to take the examination for a second time. Should he or she fail to pass the merit for the second time, then he or she shall be required to take a DECS accredited refresher course or program before being allowed to retake the examination. Failure of any permanent teacher to pass the merit examination shall not, however, be used as a ground for his or her dismissal of demotion. In Section 21, the incentives. Teacher who pass the merit examination shall A. Be rewarded a diploma of merit by the board, and B. Earn merit points for purposes of promotion in salary or to higher position or grade level. C. Be placed in the priority list for government scholarship, and D. Enjoy such other benefits as may be promulgated by the board. Similar incentives shall be given to teachers who make inventions, develop a new method of teaching, write a book or books, and create works of artistic merit. In Section 22, integration of teaching profession. The teaching profession shall be integrated into one national organization which shall be recognized by the board and the commission as the one and only integrated and accredited association of professional teachers. Upon registration with the board, every professional teacher shall be encouraged to become a member of the integrated national organization. Those who have been registered with the board but are not members of the said integrated organization within 3 years after the effectivity of this act. Membership in the integrated organization shall not be a bar to a membership in other association of teaching profession. The professional teacher shall receive the benefits and privileges appertinent to their membership in the said integrated and accredited organization of professional teacher only upon payment of the required membership fee and dues. In Section 23, revocation of the certificate of registration, suspension from the practice of the teaching profession, and cancellation of temporary or special permit. The board shall have the power, after due notice and hearing, to suspend or revoke the certificate of registration of any registrant, to reprimand or to cancel the temporary or special permit of the holder thereof who is exempt from registration for any of the following causes. A. Conviction of any criminal offense by court or competent jurisdiction. B. Immoral, unprofessional, or dishonorable conduct. C. Declaration by a court of competent jurisdiction for being mentally unsound or insane. And letter D. Malpractice, gross incompetence, gross negligence, or serious ignorance of the practice of the teaching profession. Letter E. The use or perpetration of any fraud or deceit in obtaining a certificate of registration, professional license, or special or temporary permit. Letter F. Chronic inebriety of habitual use of drugs. And letter G. Violation of any of the provision of this act, the rules and regulation and other policies of the board and the commission, and the code of ethical and professional standard for professional teachers. And H. Unjustified or willful failure to attend seminars, workshops, conferences, and the like, or the continuing educational program prescribed by the board and the commission. The decision of the board to revoke or suspend a certificate may be appealed to the regional trial court of the place where the board holds office within 15 days from the receipt of the said decision or the denial of the motion for reconsideration filed in due time. In Section 24, registration by reciprocity. No teacher of the foreign nationality shall be admitted to the examination or be given a certificate of registration or be entitled to any of the rights and privileges provided under this Act, unless the country or state of which he is subject permits Filipino professional teachers to practice within its territorial limits on the same basis as subjects or citizen of said country or states. In Section 25, roster of professional teachers. A roster of professional teachers containing the names and addresses of professional teachers, date of registration or issuance of certificate, and other data which in the opinion of the board may appear pertinent shall be maintained. Copies of the roster shall be provided by the Commission to the Board, the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, and the Integrated and the Accredited Organization of Professional Teachers. In Section 26, registration and exception. 2 years after the effectivity of this Act, no person shall engage in teaching and or act as a professional teacher as defined in this Act, whether in the preschool, elementary, or secondary level, unless he is a duly registered professional teacher and a holder of a valid certificate of registration and a valid professional license, or a holder of a valid special or temporary permit. Upon approval of the application and payment of the prescribed fees, the certificate of registration and the professional license as a professional teacher shall be issued without examination as required in this Act to a qualified applicants who at the time of the approval of this Act is a holder of a certificate of eligibility as a teacher issued by the Civil Service Commission and the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports, or B, a registered professional teacher with the National Board for Teacher under the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports, or the DECS, pursuant to Presidential Decree number 1006, or C, not qualified under paragraphs 1 and 2 but with any of the following qualification to wit. Number 1, an elementary or secondary teacher for 5 years in good standing and a holder of Bachelor of Science in Education or its equivalent. Or number 2, an elementary or secondary teacher for 3 years in good standing and holder of a master's degree in education or its equivalent, provided that there shall be given 2 years from the organization of the board for professional teachers within which to register and be included in the roster of professional teachers, provided further that those incumbent teachers who are not qualified to register without examination under this Act or who, albeit qualified, were unable to register within the 2-year period shall be issued a 5-year temporary or special permit from the time the board is organized within which to register after passing the examination and complying with the requirements provided in this Act and be included in the roster of professional teachers. Provided furthermore that those who have failed the licensure examination for professional teachers shall be eligible as para teachers and as such shall be issued by the board a special or temporary permit, and shall be assigned by the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports, or the DECS, to schools at it may determine under the circumstances. In Article 4, the provision relative to the practice of the teaching profession. Section 27. Inhibition against the practice of the teaching profession. Except as otherwise allowed under this Act, no person shall practice or offer to practice the teaching profession in the Philippines or be appointed as teacher to any position calling for a teaching position without having previously obtained a valid certificate of registration and a valid professional license from the Commission. In Section 28, Penal Provisions. The following shall be punishable by a fine of not less than 5,000 pesos nor more than 20,000 pesos, or imprisonment of not less than 6 months nor more than 5 years, or both, at the discretion of the court. A. Any person who practices the teaching profession in the Philippines without being certified in accordance with the provision of this Act. B. Any person who represents and attempts to use as his own certificate of registration that of another. C. Any person who gives any false or fraudulent evidence of any kind to the board or any members thereof in obtaining a certificate of registration as a teacher. D. Any person who impersonates any registrant of the same or different name. Or letter E. Any person who uses a revoked or suspended certificate of registration. Letter F. Any person who in connection with his name otherwise assume, uses, or advertises any title or description tending to convey or conveys the impressions that he is a teacher without holding a valid certificate. And G. Any person who violates or who abets the violation of any of provision of this Act. The penalty of fine or imprisonment of both, as provided in this section, shall also apply to any school or school official who has caused or be responsible for the commission of any of the above enumerated acts. In Section 29, appropriation. Such sum as may be necessary to carry out the provision of this Act shall be included in the 1996 General Appropriation Act and thereafter. In Section 30, implementing guidelines. The board shall formulate and adopt the necessary guidelines for the effective implementation of the provision of this Act within 60 days of its approval. The board shall submit to both Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and the Committees on Civil Service and Professional Regulation of the Senate and House of the Representatives copies of the implementing rules and guidelines within 30 days after its promulgation. Any violation of this section shall render the officials concerned liable under Republic Act Number 6713, otherwise known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standard for Public Officials and Employees, and other pertinent administrative or penal laws. In Section 31, transitory provision. All incumbent teacher in both the public and private sector not otherwise certified as professional teachers by virtue of this Act shall be given 5 years temporary certificates from the time that the Board for Professional Teacher is organized within which to qualified qualify as required by this Act and be included in the roster of professionals. Provided, however, that the Professional Board Examination for Teachers, or PVET, shall still be administered by the Civil Service Commission and the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports for the year 1995. In Section 32, Separability Clause. If for any reasons, any section or provision of this Act or the application of such section or provision to any person or circumstance is declared unconstitutional or invalid, no other section or provision of this Act shall be affected thereby. In Section 33, Repealing Clause. All laws, presidential decrees, executive orders, rules and regulation, or part thereof inconsistent with the provision of this Act are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. In Section 34, Effectivity Clause. This Act shall take effect after 15 days following its complete publication in the official Gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation. This is approved by Edgardo J. Angara, who is the President of the Senate, and Jose de Venencia Jr., who is the Speaker of the Representatives. This Act, which is consolidation of House Bill number 13059 and Senate Bill number 1452, was finally passed by the House of Representatives and the Senate on December 14, 1994 and December 15, 1994. Respectively, Edgardo E. Tumangan, the Secretary of the Senate, and Camilo L. Savio, the Secretary General, House of Representatives, and approved December 16, 1994 by Fidel B. Ramos, who is the President of the Philippines. In Republic Act number 9293, an act amending certain section of Republic Act numbered 7836, otherwise known as the Philippine Teachers Professionalization Act of 1994. In Section 1, Section 15 of Republic Act number 7836 is hereby amended as follows. Section 15, Qualification Requirements of Applicant. No applicant shall be admitted to take the examination unless, on the date of filing of the application, he shall have complied with the following requirements. First, a graduate of a school, college, or university recognized by the government and possesses the minimum educational qualification as follows. For teacher in preschool, a bachelor degree in early childhood education or DepEd or its equivalent. Number 2, for teachers in the secondary grades, a bachelor's degree in elementary education or its equivalent. Number 3, for teachers in the secondary grades and bachelor's degree in education or its equivalent with a major and minor or a bachelor degree in arts and sciences with at least 18 units in professional education. And number 4, for teacher of vocational and 2 years technical courses, a bachelor's degree in the field of specialization or its equivalent with at least 18 units in professional education. In Section 2, Section 26 of the same Act is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 26, Registration and Exception. No person shall engage in teaching and or act as a professional teacher as defined in this Act, whether in the preschool, elementary, or secondary level, unless the person is duly registered professional teachers and a holder of a valid certificate of registration and a valid professional license, or a holder of a valid special or temporary permit. Upon approval of the application and payment of these prescribed fees, and the certificate of registration and professional license as a professional teacher shall be issued without examination as required in this act to qualified applicant who is a holder of a certificate of eligibility as a teacher, each issued by the Civil Service Commission and the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, and or be a registered professional teacher with the National Board for Teachers under the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, or DECS, pursuant to Presidential Decree number 1006. Professional teachers who have not practiced their profession for the past 5 years shall take at least 12 units of educational courses, consisting of at least 6 units of pedagogy and 6 units of context courses, or the equivalent training, and number hours to be chosen from a list of courses to be provided by the board and the Department of Education before they can allowed to practice their profession in the country. Those who have failed the licensure examination for professional teachers with a rating of not lower than 5 percentage points from the passing general average rating shall be eligible as para-teachers upon issuance by the board of a 2-year special permit, renewable for a non-extendable period of 2 years. The para-teacher shall be assigned to areas where there is a shortage or absence of professional teachers, identified and provided by the Department of Education in the Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao, or the RMMM Education Department, to the Board for Professional Teachers, and to the Commission. The special permit shall indicate the area of assignment of the para-teachers. A special permit may also be issued by the board to a person who has excelled and gained international recognition and is a widely acknowledged expert in his or her respective field of specialization. In Section 3, the Section 31 of the same Act is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 31, Transitory Provisions. Special permits with a validity of 3 and 5 years issued to para-teachers by the Board for Professional Teachers before the effectivity of this Act shall be allowed to expire based on period granted therein, provided that only special permits with a validity of 3 years may be renewed upon expiration for a non-extendable period of 2 years. In Section 4, references to the term Department of Education, Culture and Sports in Section 4, and Section 25, the term DECS in Section 20 on the same Act are hereby amended to read as Department of Education, or DepEd, respectively. In Section 5, the Separability Clause. If, for any reason, any section or provision of this Act, or the application of such section in this provision to any person in circumstance is declared unconstitutional or invalid, no other section or provision of this Act shall be affected thereby. In Section 6, Repealing Clause. All laws, decrees, circulars, administrative orders, rules and regulations, and other issuances which are inconsistent with the provisions of this act hereby repealed or modified accordingly. This is approved by Franklin Drilon, the President of the Senate, and Jose de Venancia Jr., the Speaker of the House of Representatives. This act, which is consolidation of Senate Bill number 2698 and House Bill number 5411, was finally passed by the Senate and House of Representatives on February 6, 2004 and February 7, 2004, respectively, by Oscar G. Yabes, the Secretary of Senate, and Roberto P. Nazareno, the Secretary General House of Representatives, and also approved April 21, 2004 by Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the President of the Philippines. That's all. Thank you and God bless.